Today we'll be looking at some pieces of brutal retirement advice that everyone in their 50s needs to hear. In my last decade operating in the financial services industry, I've seen countless individuals and couples hit their 50s and then suddenly realize that they're not as prepared as they thought. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to deliver some hard truths about retirement that I believe everyone in their 50s needs to hear. I'll break down the most critical retirement issues, explain why traditional advice might be failing you, and show you what to do right now to secure your financial future in retirement. So let's get right into it. So the first piece of brutal retirement advice is to plan on requiring some form of custodial care during your lifetime. If you're not familiar, custodial care is needed when a person can no longer perform basic activities on their own. These are defined by the insurance industry as activities of daily living, or ADLs. But they're things like bathing or being able to safely move across the room on your own. But isn't this just what happens? Why does it matter? It's because A, the services that are needed to perform these activities are very expensive. B, they're highly unlikely to be covered by your medical insurance. These costs can very easily blow up your financial plan. So it's not covered by your medical insurance and it's expensive. But what are the odds of actually needing custodial care? There's a 70% chance that you'll need some form of custodial care during retirement and a 20% probability that you'll need care for a period lasting longer than 5 years. In dollar terms, that can translate to an out-of-pocket bill in the upwards of $750,000 in today's dollars. So what does this mean for your retirement? Well, like most topics, it's going to depend on your situation, but I think for anybody who's married, it means anticipating greater income needs during your later years when you're calculating your retirement savings requirement. And also coming up with a legal plan to either implement now or in the future should care be needed. This is a tricky topic because everybody's situation is really going to be unique, but particularly for those who are planning for two, the goal is to presumably protect the spouse who doesn't eventually need care from becoming impoverished or, said differently, being left with minimal assets and income to live off of. This would occur if the cost of the care depleted your assets, at which point Medicaid would likely step in. I think the best place for anybody to start is to do some research on, long-term care in general. Try to learn about the types of insurance that you can buy, the costs of potential care to consider in your retirement planning, common estate planning strategies to reduce your risk, and so forth. It's unfortunately not too uncommon for me to encounter long-term care-related scenarios in working with my clients. I can't say that any situation is the same, especially because those who need care today likely had the opportunity to purchase long-term care insurance back when it was more affordable. So in working with my current clients in their 50s, a big part of the discussion is around how much it would cost to pay for care down the road and whether they're currently projected to be able to afford this in addition to their other more predictable spending needs. Now, I can only discuss planning for long-term care in a small amount of detail in this video because we have to move on to the next point, but I'm going to break this down in far greater detail in another video in a few weeks' time. So to make sure that you don't miss out, click the subscribe button now. So the second piece of brutal retirement advice is to plan for similar or higher expenses in retirement. One of the biggest surprises for new retirees is how little their day-to-day expenses actually drop when they stop working. And when I say day-to-day expenses, I don't mean income taxes and dollars that you're saving in your 401k, if you consider that expense, but rather the goods and services, property taxes, and so forth that you're paying for to maintain your lifestyle. Many people assume that once they're out of the workforce, they'll naturally spend less. But the reality is often the opposite. Housing costs, hobbies, travel, medical bills, and the occasional big-ticket item can add up. Plus, you may find yourself waiting to spend more on leisure and lifestyle activities that you never had time for while working. In fact, in some cases, retirement expenses can even exceed pre-retirement spending. So what does this mean for your retirement? Planning for similar or even slightly higher expenses is crucial, as underestimating these costs could lead to an early depletion of your savings. It's a common mistake to assume that you'll live on 70% or 80% of your working year's income, which can lead to a shortfall later. A realistic approach is to project a retirement budget that doesn't compromise on your lifestyle expectations or your medical needs. In my experience, most households are unfamiliar with how much they're actually spending. There's of course some households who keep a tight budget, but I've found them to be outliers. The most common reason for underestimating expenses is neglecting to consider the atypical intermittent costs that arise for maintaining your home or paying for a new vehicle. Many of my clients gain valuable insights to their spending habits after closely examining their numbers with me. Often they find that they may need more income in retirement than they initially anticipated. By revising these spending estimates to reflect a more realistic budget and adopting a more conservative approach to planning, We can make more informed decisions about the timing of retirement, the potential benefits of part-time work, and the optimal timing for filing for their Social Security benefits. The third brutal piece of retirement planning advice is to plan on living longer. With today's healthcare advancements, more people are living well into their 80s and 90s, so retirement plans now need to account for these longer lifespans. Many of my clients in their 50s are surprised to learn that there's a greater than 60% chance for at least one of two spouses to live into their 90s. That's a probability, not a possibility. While living longer is certainly good news, it also calls for a more robust financial plan to ensure that your funds last as long as you do. Living longer impacts retirement by requiring a longer income stream, potentially higher healthcare and custodial care costs, and a withdrawal strategy that doesn't drain your savings too early. Unfortunately, many people overlook longevity when they're planning for retirement, assuming a shorter retirement horizon, which can lead to financial challenges down the road. This miscalculation can quickly turn to a harsh reality, especially if you encounter unforeseen medical or custodial care expenses. A balanced plan is essential to mitigate these risks. I recall working with a couple who began the retirement planning process with the assumption that they would only live until the age of 80. They planned to take Social Security early and to withdraw from their savings more aggressively in their early years of retirement. However, after reviewing the odds of them living longer than they expected and considering the implications for their future lifestyle and the potential burden on their children, we were able to make much more informed decisions about their retirement. This gave them greater confidence in their ability to maintain the lifestyle that they desired. A good starting point is to aim for at least one spouse to live into their 90s. By doing so, you can better align your financial decisions to minimize the odds of being forced to rely upon your children or drastically change your lifestyle during your later years. The fourth piece of brutal retirement advice is to pay down your debt before retirement. Carrying debt into retirement, whether it's high interest credit cards, personal loans, or even your mortgage, can create a financial burden that impacts your quality of life. Eliminating your debt before retirement can free up cash flow and significantly reduce the stress that you have to put on your financial assets. With something to the tune of 70% of outstanding mortgages currently costing less than 4%, I found that a lot of people have developed the mindset that they can easily outperform their mortgage, meaning that they can earn greater returns on their savings than the cost to carry their debt. This is unfortunate, especially for those who are in their 50s who really shouldn't be accepting this uncertainty. I've seen this story go both ways. Pre-retirees not prioritizing getting rid of their debts, only to find they need to spend an unsustainable amount of their portfolio to meet their living expenditures, and those who aggressively pay down their mortgage before retiring and ultimately become better equipped to deal with market volatility on their assets. If you have outstanding debt, prioritize paying off high-interest loans first, and then consider accelerating your mortgage payments if possible. This gives you more freedom with your savings and ensures a smoother transition into retirement. The fifth piece of brutal retirement advice is that you may not be able to avoid investment risks. While it's common to want to play it safe as retirement nears, being too conservative with your investments can actually harm your long-term financial security. As the things that we buy increase in price over time, investing too conservatively might not provide the returns that you need to sustain your retirement lifestyle. This means that even in retirement, some level of risk is sometimes necessary. Avoiding investment risk may feel safe now, but doing so may inadvertently increase your risk of depleting your funds during retirement. Consider somebody who spends 4% each year as a percentage of their total portfolio, and that spending is increasing by 3% each year due to inflation. Without any risk in their portfolio, they will not be able to grow their funds by enough to offset their ongoing spending, and as a result, their portfolio will likely run out within, say, 15 or so years. This is obviously an extreme example, but the point is that most retirees need to accept some form of risk to meet their long-term spending needs. Many people mistake conservatism for security, thinking they'll be safe if they only invest in bonds or cash. But without any growth investments in your portfolio, you may struggle to meet your long-term income needs. A lot of my more risk-averse clients benefit from compartmentalizing their accounts and distinguishing funds earmarked for longer-term needs from funds that are needed for shorter-term needs. Although we both know that dollars are fungible, this at least gives them the confidence they need to implement a long-term strategy that best aligns with what their long-term goals are. Now that you have every brutal piece of retirement advice that you need to know in your 50s, you can better plan for your retirement. If you want my team of professionals to help you plan a more financially successful retirement, click the first link in the description of this video and book an entirely complimentary call. I'll see you in the next one.